And all right, we're all set.
Okay, welcome everyone. I am Jan Soterakis. I am the Emergency Management Director for the town of Chittenden and also the Vice Chair of the Regional Emergency Management Committee. You'll notice in the agenda, and I believe that Maggie sent out information that we are going to be looking for a new chairperson. Dave Atherton from the town of Brandon stepped down. He changed his positions from Brandon town manager to now Pittsburgh town manager and needed to take a little bit of a break. So we will be looking further on in the agenda for a new chair. So let's start off with a voting recall or voting roll call to see if we have a quorum tonight. I'll turn it to you, Maggie.
Okay. Do we have, and I'll just go through town by town. Anyone from the town of Benson? I don't believe so. Anyone from, let me pull up the town list so I don't go out of order here. All right. Anyone from the town of Brandon?
Seth Hopkins and Tim Giles.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Anyone from Castleton? I don't believe so.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Yes. Right. Sorry. My apologies. Anyone from Chittenden? We have Jan.
And Bob Case is here also.
Okay, excellent. Anyone from Clarendon? Anyone from Danby?
Tom Johnston, Danby.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Anyone from Fairhaven? Anyone from Hupperton? Anyone from Ira? Anyone from Killington? Anyone from Mendon? Anyone from Middletown Springs? I know Herb was trying to make it here tonight, but he had to cancel last minute. Anyone from Mount Holly?
Jeff Chase.
All right, excellent.
And
Thank you.
And John McCann as well.
Oh, excellent. All right, thank you. Anyone from Mount Tabor? Anyone from Paulet?
Bob, Leno.
Yep.
I think Jay is supposed to be phone or.
He just hopped on, actually, so I'll let him in. Anyone from Pittsburgh? Anyone from Pulteney? Anyone from Proctor?
Michael Ramsey, I'm here.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Michael. Anyone from Rutland City?
Yes.
Yep, Bill Lovett, thank you. Anyone from Rutland Town? Anyone from Shrewsbury? Anyone from Sudbury? Anyone from Tinmouth? Anyone from Wallingford?
Jim Bagnall.
All right, excellent, thank you. Anyone from Wells? Anyone from West Haven?
Carrie Ellis.
All right, thank you, Carrie. And last but not least, anyone from West Rutland?
Michael Skaza.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, everyone.
Sounds like a great turnout. We have 28.
Do we really have 28? I would have to, I can add up the number myself to double check that. But
we need 28 to have a quorum.
yeah, I've had to adjust that number a little bit because we've had some EMDs who have resigned since then. I'm not 100% sure if we do it still based on the quorum that was in the bylaws or if we adjust according to the membership. Just for our sakes, to make our lives a little bit easier, we might want to stick with the adjusted number. Since it's so hard to meet quorum, which as a small add-on, they're actually going through the legislature right now to change that. And they're going to change quorum to be, if you have 5 members, you have a quorum, which would be great. So the new number, I believe, that I've calculated is 26 because we have a total of 51. So I can do the math for that and let us know later if we actually have quorum or not.
Okay.
But, all right.
But just for voting purposes, we'll need to have a quorum. So I'll let you count while we review the agenda for tonight. Maggie has shared the screen It's shared on the screen. Are there any additions that people would like to make for the agenda? It's full. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
It's Michael Ramsey. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Michael. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, you got that, Maggie. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Nay? Okay. So moving to the minutes of our last meeting, which was on December 14th. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes if there are no changes that anyone would like to make.
Motion to approve the minutes.
All right, Bill Lovett is putting forward the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you.
Seconded by
Bob.
Rob Merlino.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. So that moves us to an update on the binary blizzard buildup, also known as B3. And Maggie, I will let you cover that now.
Okay, yes. So, as you recall from our last meeting, binary blizzard is the state functional exercise for the long-term power outage simulation in October of 2024. Now, we created a whole calendar of activities for the year to help us prepare for that. And likewise, later in the summer, I'll be preparing another calendar for the next year. So far, for our binary blizzard activities, we had the Red Cross training course at the end of January. That was pretty well attended, and we got a lot of good discussion out of that. So that was a good start. February, had the hot topic meeting for the pet sheltering from Radar. That's the Rutland area disaster animal rescue team. And they gave us a lot of good information about how we can support pet owners during times of sheltering and disaster. And this month, last week, actually, we had the roundtable review for the vulnerable population protocol. This is a protocol, if you recall, that we include with the town's LEMP or local emergency management plan, where we have EMDs get in touch with social service agencies in our area and ask them to check on clients. With that, the review mainly focused on what happened during the December 23rd storm, or more commonly known as the Christmas storm, where the protocol did not really work as intended upon activation. So we wanted to go back to ground zero and discuss, is the protocol still useful? Does the structure of it need to change in order for it to become more effective? And how can we get around issues of legality with certain social service agencies who didn't want to violate HIPAA? So we came to a lot of conclusions during our conversation, primarily that the protocol should be clearly defined as a short-term response plan, because some of the social service agencies, such as BEATA, such as VNA, which is the Visiting Nurses Association, they're better suited to check on patients in a more short-term response. The power is only going to be out for a day or two. And then some other organizations like United Way might be better suited for a more long-term response if we know the power is going to be out for at least a couple of weeks. So we want to make the language in the protocol more clear that this is for a short-term response only, and that the reporting procedure should be heavily altered or otherwise removed to circumvent any issues regarding HIPAA. So I saw Abby Spiegelman on the call. She's from the hospital. That means you guys can probably join back on the protocol again once we rewrite it. So that's good news. And we're going to put in the specific agencies that EMD should contact upon activation to make it more clear what agencies should be reached out to in a short-term response. So with that, I did send the full memo to everyone by email earlier today, so you can give that a read for a more in-depth review. That being said, the protocol, we will still be adopting the current version of it as it stands because the LEMP deadline is just too close for us to try to make a rewrite and shove it in everyone's faces to adopt before May 1st. So we will be, or rather I will be, focusing on rewriting those sections. I'll review with my steering committee again, the ones who are at the roundtable, and the revised protocol will be in effect from 2024 onwards. So that is where we are with that. Let's see. So just as a reminder, LEMPs are due by May 1st. Please get those into me on time so I don't have to chase after you. In addition to the local emergency management plans, we would like you to submit the contact and signature page for the Public Works Mutual Aid Agreement if your town agrees to be a part of that. And if your town agrees to be a part of the Vulnerable Population Protocol, I also send out a designated officials page today. This is just something we keep for our records, so we know who is the best personnel to contact during a time of the protocol activation. Nothing that needs to be signed off by a select board. So there's that. We have our first working group meeting for the EOC activation functional exercise, which is currently scheduled for September. That meeting is this Friday. We also had our first working group meeting for the long-term power outage annex. And they threw me a bit of a curveball today at our meeting. So it turns out they are not creating an annex for the towns to use, a template rather. So for those of you who are in our working group, we might want to go back to our idea of making one ourselves. Here's your heads up. In the meantime, we can potentially explore options for understanding what we know and don't know about our current resources and what we have on hand and what we'll need for the future, because that could help us fill out the annex too. So just a few things for us to consider. We still plan to have the workshop in July, however, unless things go completely off the rails. So we won't have any activities for April beyond the hybrid workshop that I'm hosting on, I think it was April 11th, if not the 12th, somewhere around there. Which is going to be an open-ended type workshop where you come in if you have questions, if you want me to review the drafts, but otherwise I'm leaving it up to you. It's not super structured. And there's also going to be the Vermont Emergency Management Agency session that is being held later in April. They will be hosting a Stop the Bleed event as well as a more structured LEMP review right here in this room. So I do have the flyer for that if you're interested. I've sent it out a few times, but always happy to redistribute that. And okay, that was a little bit of an exhaustive rundown, but now you have an idea of where we're at with that. And I will probably have these updates in the future, just a short 5-minute spiel about what we've been doing, what we're working on, and things like that. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our next, I guess you could call it binary blizzard activity. We have our guest speakers from the American Red Cross to talk to us about how they can help support our local shelters. So with that, I will turn it over to our guest speakers.
Thank you for having us, Maggie and everybody. My name is John Montez. I'm the Regional Disaster Officer for Northern New England for the Red Cross. So I'm responsible for Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So just a small area, just a few towns. And tonight I also brought with me Michaela Olin, who is our Northern Vermont Disaster Program Manager, and our new, they're both very new, but our new Southern Vermont Disaster Program Manager, who is Lindsay Morton. So Lindsay has business cards. She'll be leaving them with you guys. She is responsible for this area. We can just go right past introduction. So that's me. I've been doing this for 22 years now. Paramedic, Boston EMS guy, did 10 years for Boston EMS. Then I was a chief in California, and then I had to move back to Massachusetts because of my dad, and I'm the guy that wrote the NFPA 3000 standard. So that's the active shooter hostile event response standard. I also did NFPA 1600, which is the incident command standard and the incident management standard, and the National EMS scope of practice. I've been incident commander for Napa earthquake, Asiana plane crash, after the mess up. I wasn't there for the beginning. Multiple wildfires, Super Bowl 50, I was the medical planner. Done the Boston Marathon, things like that. So done a few different big events. I was not there for the bombing in 2013. At that point, I was in California. But I was one of the people that worked on the plan that we used that day. So very proud of what they did. I'm also a big time dog lover. There's my dogs. That's Ahsoka, the Husky, Diesel, sure you guys can tell which one Diesel is, and Matilda, who's nervous and scared in the back. So perfect. It's about right. So we already did introductions. We're going to talk about what Disaster Cycle Services does. That's where we work. I'm in charge of it for this area. What we have, for those of you that don't know what our resources are and what's available to you, how we do it, and how we scale and make decisions. Red Cross, I'll be honest with you guys, as someone who's new to the Red Cross, I've only been here 6 months, and I was brought in for some very specific reasons. They speak another language. And one of the areas that causes a lot of confusion is when you get Red Crossers and they're talking only in Red Cross, and you guys are talking as emergency managers, it's very stressful, very confusing, and it leads to conflict. And we don't need that. So they brought in a guy who's been on the other side of the table, it's been in your shoes, to fix that. Northern New England had a big problem with that. And I think we're making some good progress. Lindsay has a master's in emergency management, so she has non-Red Cross experience before coming to Red Cross. Michaela has a master's in social work. So when it comes to client care and client services, we've got pros in Vermont to support you. So moving forward, Disaster Cycle Services, you can go ahead.
Yeah, where are you all located? Where's your offices or where?
So we only have one office in the state, and it's in Burlington.
You all work in Burlington?
No, everyone's remote.
Okay,
So I'm actually located in Massachusetts, right?
okay.
But we have, and I'll talk about it, but we have vehicles, trailers, and volunteers all over. So what does our team do? We do natural disasters, hazardous materials, home fires, different things like that. The Red Cross considers a home fire, just a single family fire, as a natural disaster. So again, they speak their own language. Forgive me in advance. Because I sat there with them at the other side of the table in other places like California at a big wildfire and was like, go away. You're not helpful because you're only speaking in Red Cross. And I've kicked them out of rooms before. And they have a lot of things that can help you guys, but when they're confusing you in the moment, it's a bad thing. So I'm really thankful to you guys for having us, because this is an opportunity to deconflict those things in advance. Hazardous materials, we staff sheltering and mass care is our big thing. That's our most important thing in a true disaster response. And we'll even support local emergency officials with canteening. So if you have a fire or a long duration search, standoff, even special operations standoff, any of those events, we will provide, water, snacks, make sure people stay healthy. Moving forward. So here's the principles we operate under. We're mission first. We're 100% donation funded. So last storm in Vermont, we opened a shelter in Brattleboro. We probably spent about $5,000 of donor money to do everything we did. We're not getting a penny from that FEMA money that's coming. Everything we do is donation driven. We're 100% volunteer driven as well. We have very few paid employees. The majority of our work is done by volunteers. We even have people that are volunteer partners that have the same authority as someone like me, who's a paid employee. And if I'm not available, my volunteer partner can step in and fill my shoes. So very volunteer driven. We're inclusive. We don't say no. Our big thing for us is to get to yes. I'll talk about that. We don't want to tell you no, or we can't do something. We want to tell you the truth about our limitations and find a way to get to what you need. We're data driven in our decision making in a lot of ways. We have a lot of data and a lot of support for that. And we're good stewards of the donor dollars, right? We have to be respectful of what people give us. And we're very careful about that. We're clients first, workers second, partners third, donors fourth, and the public last. Those are the things that we need to take care of. And we're very driven by that as well. This is an organization that's over 100 years old and has a reputation for doing good things. A lot of people think of us just as blood and biomedical, but blood is a huge thing that we do, but it's not the biggest thing we do. Our disaster services is the biggest thing. Our humanitarian services is the biggest thing we do. So here's our structure right now in Vermont. We have National Dispatch based out of DC that gets calls, 1-800-RED-CROSS. And then Our volunteers respond within 3 hours to any request for service. That's our goal, is 3 hours. Why 3 hours? Because this state is big and there's a lot of empty space. People sometimes have to drive from other places. And if you're affected by a disaster, we have to find people that aren't affected to get them here. So 3 hours is kind of our goal, but we want to do way faster. And the more volunteers we have, the more diverse population we have of volunteers, the shorter that time window is. So in Rutland, is it 3 hours? No, less than an hour, because we have people in this area. But it depends really on where the event is and what's going on. What do? Well, we provide emotional support. We have a disaster mental health team of licensed mental health clinicians to support the victims. Financial services, if qualified, we can provide some initial funds for relief so you can get the things you need, clothes, sheltering, few days of hotel, those kinds of things. It doesn't cover the replacement of the loss. It's really just so you can get back on your feet, work with your insurance, those kinds of things. And then material resources, toiletries, blankets. I think we have teddy bears for kids in the cars, different things like that. And then going forward, we have a casework team that supports after the fact. Here's a common thing. I'm going to ask this of the group. Does anybody know the number one thing I get asked for to approve expending more money than is our limit to replace after a fire? And I'll give you a hint. It has to do with something medically equipment wise. They always lose these in fires. So we can give up to $500 in medical stuff. Pharmaceuticals we cover, and we actually help you with, our nurses and our doctors will help you with getting your prescriptions filled, even if they're in advance of when they're supposed to be filled, even narcotics and things like that, if we can prove that they were lost in the fire.
Orthopedic shoes.
What's that?
Orthopedic shoes.
No, those are easy to get. Glasses are easy to get too. They only cost us about $150.
CPAPs.
CPAPs are expensive, but the hospitals will donate them. So we look out there. It's dentures. Aspen Dental fleeces us. I just got a quote for dentures for $3,000 for somebody that lost their dentures in a fire.
Ooh.
And I've been in this job 6 months and I've probably paid for 20 sets of dentures for Northern New England. So anybody that you know that has dentures, tell them, grab your teeth when you're running out the door, will you? Because good Lord, those things are expensive. So here's what we have. In Northern New England, we have a 728 member workforce of volunteers. New Hampshire, we have about 208 volunteers spread throughout the state. But I'll tell you that number is deceiving, because out of that 208, there's probably 50 to 60 that are super active and always available and working with us. The rest are people that have signed up, done some training. We have their name on a list, but they don't really do anything. So don't fall for, oh, they got 208 volunteers. Like your MRCs, right? Your MRC has 205 people on the list for Southern New Hampshire. When we had the storm in Brattleboro, you know how many showed up to the shelter? Right, and they pulled them all. So never rely on your locals. That's the advantage of the Red Cross, right? We have 49 trailers across the 3 states, 12 in Vermont, 7 are shelter trailers. They're spread out throughout the state. Rutland's got 150 hot shelter, and we also have a little bit of storage here, so we have some extra supplies in Rutland. 3 distribution of emergency supplies trailers. What those are is like cleanup equipment. So that's, brushes, brooms, cleaning supplies to help you with recovering after disaster. We have bariatric equipment in 1 shelter, and then all of our shelter trailers usually have about 10 bariatric cots. And I'll tell you, those get used quite a bit. And then we have a miscellaneous trailer that we can bring to a place like the storage unit here in Rutland and load up with stuff and move around. Home fire responses. So just this calendar year, we've done 232 fire responses in our region. We've served 539 clients. In Vermont alone, we've done 55 fire responses and we've served 132 people.
This is 2023.
Just 2023. And we do not get called for every fire. And I'm not saying that we need to, not saying that we want to, but if you need us, call us. And if the clients need us, call us. I'll tell you, I know that some fire departments are hesitant to call us because they don't want to wait the 3 hours. They want to get people moving, and I get that. But we can virtually work with someone we can transfer funds like Venmo, Zelle, and we can get them settled faster if they need to get off the scene, especially if there's bad weather or something. And then the other piece is, you know, we would rather get called by the fire department and get started early than have a relative call us the next day. Because you know what the first thing we have to do is? We have to call the fire department and confirm the damage. So we would much rather the fire department call us and get that over with that night or that morning, and then work through the client piece. I know that it's frustrating sometimes having to wait for us, but in the long run, it's better for the client if the fire department calls us.
So right here, Rutland, I don't think we've ever waited for them an hour. Ever.
You're a phenomenal team in Rutland.
Yeah, your team in Rutland's real good.
A lot of those numbers are from your region.
Yeah.
A lot of responses.
Oh, I know.
The last,
Oh,
even
yes.
the last month.
Yeah.
So you just had 2 fires in like 2 weeks,
Yes.
didn't you?
Yeah. Busy.
So, so please take that back to your fire departments as emergency managers. You know, listen, guys, we ask a lot of questions. We call and ask a lot of questions. We do that because remember I said we have to be good shepherds of the donor dollar. We have to really make sure if we're going to give somebody all these resources that they actually have an emergency. I can't tell you how many times, I'm not going to say where in Manchester, New Hampshire, people call us and say they have this big disaster. And then when we do verification of it, there's nothing there. They're looking for the easy money. We have to protect those donor dollars. So we're going to ask questions like, what's the level of damage? How long are they going to be out of the house? How many people are involved? But it's so that we can apply the correct resources to them, and because we have to follow those rules. So it's coming from a good place. I know it's annoying. I get it, because I've been that guy. I've been that EMS chief with a family sitting in the back of one of my ambulances going, are you kidding me? Just get here. I get that. But we're also relying on a volunteer workforce. So it's not like these are people that have a demand to respond. We have to rely on their better angels to help us. And they're doing what they can. And I think if you know that and you know why they're asking the questions, I think it becomes a lot less annoying in the moment. So I just wanted to share that with this group. So how do we look at our organizational structure? So as a Red Cross, we look at it as regional. So this is the Northern New England region. Divisional, which is northeast of the United States. It's basically New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and New England. And then national is the mothership. So it's similar to FEMA regions in that sense. But here in Northern New England, we are a 3-state region, which is very rare. New York as a state has 3 regions in it. But we are a 3-state region. So we're one of only 2 in the entire country that are 3 states in one. So we are very dependent on local. So if you hit the button, you'll see local is you. We need to be good partners to you guys because our resources are spread across 3 states. So we have to have good partnership with our local emergency managers and our local response agencies to be able to provide these services, because we have to work together to do this across 3 states. Next slide. So how do we judge the level of a disaster? We actually do it financially. So as you can see, a level 1, which is pretty much every day, is less than $10,000. Doesn't raise any flags. We apply resources to it. Brattleboro, we opened a shelter. We did all kinds of things. We didn't even approach 5,000. So we don't raise flags, bring in resources from outside, do all these other things that go up as you go in levels. I'll share with you that right now we have 2 level 5s going on. Anybody want to take a guess where they are?
Soon to be 3.
Soon to be 3. Nashville is actually a level 2 because we do support active shooter incidents. We provide disaster mental health, we support family reunification, and we do canteen. So we do support active shooter incidents in the reunification center. And by the way, we're not supposed to say reunification, we're supposed to say notification, because reunification creates a false sense of hope. So all right, so Nashville's a level 2, but there's 2 level 5s, and it's about to be a 3rd.
Tornado in Mississippi.
Tornado in Mississippi's 1. California might as well be a level 7 at this point, but they just keep making disasters for every atmospheric river. So California's got a level 5 going. Georgia's got a level 4 that's about to be a level 5 from the tornadoes as well. And so each of those levels isn't just money. it's resources, personnel. So right now, from Northern New England, as a matter of fact, from Vermont, there's 3 people deployed to Mississippi. We send them out, volunteers for 2 weeks, cover all their expenses, and they donate their time. So, and I think there was a news story on it, wasn't it? Might have been.
Channel 3 this one.
Yeah. So we have a couple people out in Mississippi, and now there's going to be a big push through this weekend to support the 3 level 5s. So a lot of resources being poured out, a lot of money. So you'll also see like the text to Red Cross and the drives start happening because we're starting to really pour money into stuff. The biggest one I've seen was a level 7. When I first started, my first week was Hurricane Irene in Florida. No, was it Ian? I always confuse Ian and Irene. Ian was my first week on the job. And that was like all hands on deck, send everybody you can send. At one point, we had 50 people from Northern New England in Florida at once. So pretty busy, but the levels and the money just tells us how much resources to push. Go ahead. So now let's talk about decision making. So what are our priorities? We have to establish a structure. We have to build teams. We have to maintain span of control. Sounds familiar to you guys, right? All emergency management. We need to communicate effectively. And I think that's the biggest thing right now is doing a better job of communicating effectively. And that's why they brought in an outsider, was to do that with you guys. Go ahead. So this is our, like right now, we always have our flop ready to go. Our flop is different than you guys because Red Cross can't just follow ICS. And I freaking wrote ICS and they can't follow ICS. So God forbid. So these positions are filled. Those are all a mix of staff and volunteers.
What's the first line? What are the titles? I can't read it from here.
So operations, workforce, logistics, information and planning, external relations, and then finance. Those are
There's
flop.
operations and logistics there anyway.
Yeah, and finance.
Finance, yeah.
No safety at your top. Though.
No safety.
Yeah.
No, and they don't do any safety officer stuff. They actually rely on guys like you to do that. So when we do safety at a shelter, we ask the fire department to do the walkthrough. The state fire marshal does it in Vermont. Do the walkthrough, do the safety plan, and then we rely on law enforcement to provide security.
We only see safety brought in for level 5 and above. So like Hurricane Ian, we worked with retired police officers or corrections officers that are volunteer, driven and local emergency. And then they actually staff and have our shift at the shelters or our headquarters when we have those bigger disasters. That's the only time you'll ever see them a part of the TO.
So we keep this always ready to go so that we're not trying to figure out who's going to do what when we have to open a shelter in Brattleboro. Now, understand that this is just to get it organized and get it going, right? And you'll notice that neither of them are on it because they're brand new, but also because we have to have staff as well to send and work on that stuff. Because while we have amazing volunteers, we know that there's a finite time we have to get things going. And I'll talk about Brattleboro a little more because it was a good example of better communication to our partners and slowing it down so that we can do it right. So go ahead again. We have tools. So we do analytics, maps. We're pretty good at mapping. All of the shelters and shelter sites are in a thing we have called the National Shelter System. So I can click a button and tell you, this building's a shelter. It has generator power. It can hold this many people. The last MOU was signed on this year. And this is who to contact. I can do that for anywhere in our 3 states. So when you're like, what's the best place to open a shelter? I'll tell you pretty quickly based on what I have. And then if you tell me that's not good, then I'll find the next one. Or you can tell me, I want to use this one. Is that one good to go? And I'll look it up on the system and tell you, yes, this is what it says. But who's going to know better? You guys, not us. We're just going to look on a computer and tell you. Now, if somebody from our team has done a walkthrough and we have really good logistics people. That's one thing the Red Cross has that's good. Like beyond anything else is our logistics. Our logistics people are thorough, meticulous psychopaths that what's that?
True.
Right? That will go through the stuff and tell you that. So we have online training. We can do just in time training. I know you guys have had talks about shelters, so I'm not going to talk a lot about what sheltering operations look like, but We offer that as well. We have data, event management systems. We can track client care. We have health support, obviously from the fires, getting people their prescriptions and stuff. So we have nurses and doctors. We also have a very robust mental health network as well. Our spiritual network in Northern New England is bad. We don't have a lot of clergy support. So we would bring that in from outside, but that's something we're trying to build right now.
Filters. How often are those refreshed? Assuming you guys still do them,
We do them.
Yep.
It's relying on you guys to tell us.
we see a change coming, we should let you know that it might be questionable or.
You tell Lindsay. Yeah.
Yep, okay.
We
And then
try to-
Lindsay will work with logistics to have a shelter reviewer come out and walk it with you. And it's always important that when we look at a shelter site, that a local representative be with us, right? Because again, it's relationship building, but it also is a great way for us to know this is the right spot. So like I can tell you right now, Barry is a good spot because we opened a shelter there around Christmas. We know that the facility works right. We know that the contacts are all vetted and good. I can get one open. There's a trailer right there. I can get one open quick. Same with Brattleboro High School because we just did it. And that one I can tell you works even faster and better than Barry because we have really good support from the town.
we try to redo our MOUs every 3 to 5 years. So unfortunately, because where COVID hit, we're literally still rebuilding from there. A lot of the agreements haven't been done since 2017 or 2019. So if there are ones that you're aware of that you're like, I don't know if that one's on there, but maybe, that's a great possibility, or one that's been redone recently, send Lindsay a list, and we can look at our system, see what matches, when the last time it was done was, and get back to you and, how to better compare. There are also some agencies that use us when we come into a shelter agreement as a means to prove that they need like a generator, because that's a thing in Vermont. There's a lot of places or a lot of schools that actually don't have generators, and they do use us to be able to prove and to apply for grants. So
Yeah, that just
so
happened
as well.
in a couple different places. Schools are getting generators based on EMPG grants and different things because you got to have it some way, right? So as we scale a disaster, again, this is all partnership driven, but how do we make decisions? Well, we have a situation unit that we stand up. That's usually at about a level 3. And then a damage assessment team, which can be anything. Damage assessment that the Red Cross does is actually a surprising thing that most people aren't aware of. When you look at situations like Hurricane Ian, most of the damage assessment that FEMA used was done by Red Cross. We have a whole damage assessment program. As a matter of fact, there's a damage assessment manager that worked at Ian. That's one of our volunteers here in New Hampshire. And our teams go out, they do the damage assessments, enter it into our system, and then we have an MOU with FEMA and share that across. And that's how we know who to provide assistance to and who FEMA needs to contact based on addresses. And then if we don't have information of the owner, FEMA gets that for us, and we work together on that. So that's one of the ways we build up and scale up. So here's the things we do and the things we need from the field. And then we have systems to track it. And that's information we share with you guys. But we're not the only ones that gather that information. In fact, we're not going to be gathering that information the first 4 days. That information is going to come from your local agencies and responders until we can bring in resources from outside to support you, right? Because we scale up those workforces. So we have to work together on that. We have a seat in the state EOC. We have a state representative to the EOC for Vermont. We actually have 2 now. And, our local folks like Lindsay would be in a regional EOC or with a city if it was one town affected to support you and share that information across. So here's the things we like to know. And I'm not going to get too far into it because I want to stay on time. But here's the things we're looking for. And this is how we know how much to scale up, scale down. Big one for Brattleboro was where our roads closes and why. So I'll share the information with you now. We were approached and asked to open a shelter. The storm was mostly on a Wednesday. I'm sorry, the storm was mostly on a Tuesday. They wanted us to open the shelter at 4 p.m. in the height of the storm. Our comeback, and this was from the state and from Governor Scott, our comeback was no, not safe. The other thing is, you're not going to find any volunteers to staff it because they're stuck in their homes. So our feedback was, based on current conditions and our understanding of the road closures, Our recommendation is that you issue a shelter in place warning. We'll give you a 3-hour turnaround on opening the shelter if we have to, till tomorrow morning at 9. But at 9 tomorrow morning, once the public works teams and everybody have time overnight to do some cleanup, we'll open the shelter, and that way people can come and they can charge their phones, warm up, let the kids play, and that's exactly what happened. And they can spend time there during the day, but for now, it's safer for them to stay home. Now, if there's a roof collapse or if there's a big multifamily fire, we'll pivot. But the safest option right now is to wait. Everybody agreed. Brattleboro City was on board. They were phenomenal, easy to work with. Fire chief was great. Police chief was great. Let's do it that way. Full agreement. That's what we did. So that's what I talk about with get to yes. I didn't say we're not opening the shelter. I said, let's do it this way. And everybody was in agreement. Does that make sense? The other thing I'll say is when we look at these weather events that keep occurring, and these utility losses, there's this tendency, and I've lived your shoes, so I get it, to open a shelter so you can tell your electeds and you can tell the public, we opened a shelter, right? We did this. But for the Red Cross, the semantics matter. So when you tell us we're opening a shelter, to us, that means we have to follow all the rules. Now, you can open a shelter and we'll support you, and you can make your own rules. We'll give you some people and some help, and we'll let you use the trailer and stuff. But if we're going to run the shelter for you, we have to follow our rules. So what I like to tell emergency managers, and I said this a lot already in this job a couple times now, is I'd rather open the one big shelter and have you guys open warming centers or reception centers and funnel people to the shelter if we can, because that's easier to staff and it still gives everybody what they need, right? The other option is, hey, there doesn't look like there's any overnight population demand yet. Why don't you open a reception center, which doesn't require the cots and the trailer and the whole thing, and see how many people actually show up? You've said you've done something, right? Yeah, we got a reception center. People can charge their phones. There's generator power. There's all those things. Let's see how many people show up. And if we need to pivot and make it a shelter, it's already started. So that's always what I recommend first, especially with power, with utility loss events. Start small, see what your demand is, and then grow. Because that starting of the reception center has made us go, we got to pull our volunteers. We got to see where the closest trailer is. We're already planning a shelter, but there isn't that, oh my God, where are they? Right? Because you've done something. You've put the Band-Aid on it. And now if we need to go bigger, we can.
You still have, some years ago, you had three, as I recall anyway, 3 levels of shelters. There's a Red Cross shelter, follow all the rules, you man it.
Yep.
We help you man it.
Yep.
There's a partner
Well, we
shelter.
follow your rules.
Yeah, and then the independent, just we're on our own.
On your own.
Is that still
That still
classification
applies.
you use?
Yep.
I'll have to check me, because we had a partner arrangement with you, but I don't know if it's still active. But I'll check it out.
You can check and just let Lindsay know.
Yeah.
So this is a list that's way too big to throw at you. Just understand, the important thing is we can do smaller things fast. Bigger things take time, but the prolonged bigger things is what we're best at, right? So when we get into those level 3 or above incidents where we're relying on resources from outside of New England, that's what the advantages of working with us is. In the short term, we have the stuff spread out across the state. We can get you started. We can get some volunteers there to support you. We have the relationships. We're in the places where you can communicate with us. We'll get things going, and if it stays small, we'll manage it. But if it grows, we can do that. Right? So we already kind of covered this, the information collecting, so we can skip. So we follow a lot of ICS, a lot of classic NIMS. So we do planning assumptions. We have all these forms and all these different things that we have to submit to national. So remember I talked about how we ask annoying questions. This is where the annoying questions come in, right? Like, so if we've gone to level 2, now we've triggered internally all these different reports we have to make. Damage assessment, expected funding, how much money are we going to spend? How many volunteers do we need? What kind of volunteers do we need? And I'll tell you, their language is so confusing. The Red Cross's language is so confusing. Our term for like certifications. So let's say you are certified as a shelter service associate and you are certified as disaster mental health manager. Those things are called, those certifications are called GAPs. Group activity positions. Like they speak a language that makes no sense. So if I come and go, I don't have anybody gapped in that, you're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? And that's when you kick the Red Cross out of the room. So it's so important that we speak your language, but understand that I don't have anybody that can do disaster mental health right now. I'm going to get somebody from Massachusetts. That's what I'm going to tell you. And give me 24 hours to get them, right? That's how that all works. So here's our essential services for mass care. Big thing people don't realize we do is feeding. I'll share with you because I want to be honest with you guys. Feeding's not something we're very well prepared for, but it's important that we can do it. We don't have a lot of feeding resources because it's all perishable, so we can't just go and store it somewhere. We have the ability to acquire things and spend to get it. That's why those levels exist. It gives us the ability to spend up to $10,000, boom, right away. And I can spend up to 50 without having to ask anybody. But we're not set up to be like, hang on, we've got food in Burlington, we'll get it down here in a trailer. That's not how that works. We've got water, we've got Gatorade, we've got power bars that we use for canteening at fires that we'll use initially, and then we have to acquire the food. Does that make sense? Distribution of emergency supplies, obviously, and then reunification services. So we have different, like, we have a software program that's kind of being sunsetted, but the reunification concept is, you know, you can do your safe and well. You can say you're at the shelter site. We can help with updating it, and then people can find you that way. But so again, we have to think about what's it look like in 12 hours? What's it look like in 24 hours, right? So we actually do this thing where we start a clock. And when we know there's a weather event coming, we call it the, was 90 hour. Now it's 120 hour. But we try and get things moving and in place during that 120 hours leading up to the landfall of the event. It's really related to hurricanes or blizzards, but it's, you know, pre-positioning things, moving people. You know, for hurricanes, we'll actually put people in the hurricane zone ahead of the storm so that we know we're going to need a shelter in Florida in this location, this location, this location. We're trying to pre-plan, put trailers there, and then we'll be sending trucks from our mass distribution centers with more supplies, more resources. I'll share with you that the closest mass distribution center to you guys here is Dedham, Massachusetts. So you're looking at a day for the trucks to come, but they're a union shop. So you're looking at 2 days for the trucks to go because we got to get the Teamsters to buy in on bringing the stuff. That's where so you have about 1,000 beds in the trailers in Vermont, a little more. And then there's also some in the Burlington office and in the storage here in Rutland. But, you know, we can get 10, 20,000 on trucks within 24 hours. So this is just estimating the scale. Not much there that we haven't talked about or that you're not familiar with, so go ahead. So here's our priority actions. Find the shelters. Are they Red Cross managed or partner managed? I'll share with you if there's a regional event in all of New England, I'm only going to tell governors you get 2. All of you get 2. You get 1 north, you get 1 south. Find the biggest spot you've got, and then use your National Guard resources and your other resources to move people to those locations. Because the reality is we've got to manage 3 states. And with the population and everything, and that's Red Cross managed. Now, Red Cross supported, that's different. Independent, that's different. But true regional shelters in a 3-region wide massive event, my answer is going to be you get 2 each. Because that's realistically what we can get started. Make sense? Go ahead. We talked about that. Setting up the flock. It's all things you guys are familiar with. I don't want to repeat things you already know. And go ahead. So these are the kinds of sites we need. So it's not just a shelter site. If there's an event that's hitting level 3 or above, and we're bringing in resources from outside northern New England, we may need to, because we don't have offices in every major city or major area, especially in Vermont, especially in southern Vermont, we may come to Rutland and go, hey, is there a place we can use to manage the Red Cross part of this response? Right? Like a department operations center, basically, would be what you guys would call it. I may go, Maggie, can we use this conference room, right? Because this is a good spot. It's right in downtown. It's got Wi-Fi. It's got everything we need. So we may come to you and ask for help with locating that. We'll pay rent. We'll sign a contract. Like,
You need electricity, right?
the electricity.
This doesn't have any emergency power, does it, this building?
I asked Devin that once, and I feel like there is a backup generator somewhere. I don't know for sure. I haven't been here long enough to test that theory, but
But that is something we'll ask for.
We do have generators, we have a place we can plug it into.
Yeah, we actually have generators as well that we can come in. If with a good electrician, we can get a building some power. And we do have some we have some weird engineer guys in our logistics team that would probably be like, well, if you have this tool, I can connect it. I've seen them. Yeah, they're weird. Engineers are a weird bunch, I'll tell you that. When I was in California, they scared me. I was in Silicon Valley. Imagine being the EMS chief for Silicon Valley. It was a weird place. Hi, we'd like 4 ambulances. We want to test autonomous driving Teslas.
Oh.
Yeah. So we would ask for a place to set up our operations, or we would contract with a hotel. If a hotel had power, we would, get the conference rooms in a hotel and use that location. And then we would have representatives in the EOCs. We would bring in people to represent us at the local EOC, the affected areas. We have people at the state EOC already, and we would go from there. Good. We try and stay 3 days in advance. So in a big operation, long-term sheltering, people displaced for multiple days, which, knock on wood, we don't get a lot in New England. We try and be 3 days ahead because that's how long it takes us to bring people in, right? Because we're flying them in from all over the country. Right now, it's getting rough because we got 3 level 5s all over the country going on. If we had something going on here in northern New England right now, we'd be okay because New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey would send us help. Massachusetts might not, never know. It depends on the mood, depends on how the Bruins are doing. But the other states will support us in the meantime. Okay. So really important, we can also add workforce. So we call them event-based volunteers, or EBVs. Again, too many acronyms at the Red Cross. But if we have a big enough event, like a level 7 Hurricane Ian, and people show up and go, I want to volunteer, we can get them onboarded same day. The important thing though, we still background check them. We still make sure they're not serial killers. If they come and say, I'm a doctor, we go, what kind of doctor? And we check their licenses. We don't just let someone say I'm a doctor and then we've got a podiatrist working a cardiac arrest in a shelter. No. We make sure that we got the right people in the right places. Although a podiatrist might be very good at working cardiac arrest, who knows? I'd rather not have my foot massaged when my heart stops, but you never know. And we still follow all those same rules. So if we're saying, yeah, we're signing up volunteers at the shelter site, understand that we're still vetting them. And for you guys, if you're like, we need people power for something, that's a good place for us to partner and go, okay, in our world, that's this. We'll sign them up and we'll assign them that to support you. That way, they get vetted for you. Make sense? Go ahead.
just for the sake of time, I will say, this is kind of like a 5-minute warning.
Thank you.
So we can stay on track. I don't want to keep people later than they have to be, so.
We're almost there. So availability of local volunteers, again, I'll hit on that Brattleboro shelter because it just happened. Availability was very low. It was actually a struggle to get it open at 9 o'clock that morning. Everybody said they were too busy digging out their own house and they couldn't help. So all the local people, none of them opened it. You know who opened it? People from New Hampshire. Drove over from northern New Hampshire that next morning and they took care of it. So understand that your local people in those initial times, that's why we're so heavily leaning on the public safety side, because you guys have to do it. You have to be there. You have to be at work in a lot of cases, unless it's a volunteer fire department type of situation. And even then, those people are more likely to show up and get it started while we bring in resources from elsewhere. We will still poll our people, see what we have. One of the reasons we have paid staff as well is for that backstop of saying, Lindsay, you got to go. Michaela, you got to go. But we're going to keep our people safe. So these are the different places we source workforce from. We can also work with other volunteer organizations. A good example is in Vermont, we work very closely with VDART. When we open a shelter that's Red Cross run, VDART handles the animal side of it every time. So it's a easy way. And in this case, down in Brattleboro, we worked with the MRC as well. So there's more stuff on event-based volunteers. We'll keep going. One thing that people don't think about is we also have the ability to do remote work. And we actually have multiple mental health people from New England doing remote deployment to California right now. And they're providing mental health services to people that were affected by the atmospheric rivers virtually. So COVID actually made this better for us. We got better at doing this. So now we have a lot more resources available virtually to add to what we have locally. So it's a pretty nice thing that we can do. You can skip this. It works well, period. I heard you guys talking about, it's funny that you talked about this, vulnerable populations, right? And sharing of information. I'm not going to get into all of this, but understand we are HIPAA protected. We have licensed clinicians and things. So our systems have HIPAA walls. So if we're providing health services to somebody, the only people that can see it are people that are licensed clinicians. I happen to be a paramedic and I'm the disaster officer, so I can see it. But only our doctors, our nurses, our social workers, our mental health providers can see it. So we have HIPAA walls. We have the ability to do that. If someone goes, oh, I can't tell you that because of HIPAA, we actually have the legal forms to go, yes, you can. Here's our information. Our lawyers wrote this so you can see it. Here you go. There's also a public safety exception. So your fire departments and your police departments absolutely can be told when someone has a vulnerability. So please know that. That's in the law. We already talked about this. Notice events, no notice events. You guys know what that is. You can see it on the slides. Maggie's going to share it. Speed to scale. So again, 24 hours, you're looking at something small and we scale up. So that's why I always say start with the reception center, call it a warming or a cooling center, and then we build from there. That even works for big fires. If you have a big multifamily fire, we just did this in Caribou, Maine. We have an office there. There was this, the whole city block went up. Was it a month ago? Caribou mess. And all the people had places to go with relatives and family, but they still needed our services. So we said, go to our office in Caribou, got it on the local news, got it out on social media, and everybody came, plugged in their phones, charged it up, got signed up for resources and services, got their disaster assistance cards if they were eligible. And we took care of them that way. Go ahead, stabilization phase, you guys know what that is. Demob, we always want to get there. So here's one thing on that. When we open a Red Cross shelter, technically, we're supposed to give 24 hours notice when we're going to close it. I say that's stupid. If we have no demand, there's no reason to make our volunteers stay there overnight. If we're seeing that the shelter is empty, we're going to close it. Unless we're in one of those long-term level 2 or level 3 above situations where we have clients that have nowhere to go and they've been there for multiple days at a time, then we're going to give them the 24 hours notice. But we also have shelter transition teams that help people get out of the shelters. Go ahead. You can skip it. You'll see all this when you look at it. It's more detail about that. All right, questions?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So if we have a long-term power outage that lasts a couple of weeks, 30 plus days, what kind of a level of a disaster would that be?
Probably be a level 2.
Level 2?
Yeah, we'll probably go over 10,000. We'll bring in resources from the other states, but I don't see us calling other Massachusetts, New York, outside of Northern New England. I don't see us going there. we can house people comfortably for, you know, especially over time, our local volunteers are going to make themselves more available. Right. So that kind of situation we can do over time. But when you look at the binary blizzard and that whole exercise, that's a nightmare, right? Because getting the shelter open is going to be the hardest thing. So that goes back to what makes the most sense. How sure are we of the forecast? Do we know we should go to somewhere like Barry, somewhere here, maybe somewhere in Brattleboro, if we know this is where it's going to hit the worst, and get people pre-staged there. Maybe they have to be housed at a firehouse, maybe they have to be housed at the shelter site. So that's why it's important to have those conversations with our local team and get that information to me so I can make those decisions if we need to. My instinct is we're going to pull availability. We're going to say where it's going to be ahead of time in an event like that. We're going to do it here. We're going to do it in Barry. That's where the state loves to open, right? I don't know why the state loves that spot so much, but they do.
Off of 89.
That's yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, it's always we want Barry open. For this last storm, we want to open in Barry. No. It's Barry's fine. Brattleboro's getting whacked. So you know, it goes back to have that conversation ahead of time. Yeah, that's a good point. And we have to balance that, right? And so that's why the relationships with you guys on the local level and working with our local team is how we get the right information. And when we push back, as long as we're doing something, generally the politicians go, great, something's being done. I got something I can say in front of the camera. And that's how you do it.
All right. In the interest of time, if you do have any questions, I will be sending around Tom's email. And sorry, brain fart. With that, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thanks.
You have business cards?
Yeah, Lindsay's got business cards for all of you.
Yeah. You can shoot me an email and I'll get you to John.
No.
Yeah, I totally blanked on bringing them. I drove up from Hull, Massachusetts this morning, so it was a long ride. Well, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate being here. We'll get out of your hair so you guys can. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I will be back to meet all of you, so you know. It's very new. My business cards are right back here.
All right, great, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much.
And if you ever want us to come back and do an NFPA 3000 talk, I'll do it. So that's 90 minutes, and that's video. That's a whole other thing.
Okay, I think we'll move on the agenda. This is the time we'll report from our representatives, starting off with Bob Morlino, our statewide LEPC representative. Bob, do you have any report?
The only thing to report is that we haven't had an LEPC meeting yet, but one is in the planning stages. I think that it'll happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think, maybe on the 3-week side. So we will have the first new LEPC meeting shortly.
Okay, thank you. And then Mike Ramsey, our threat hazard identification and assessment and state preparedness person. Any report for you?
Thanks, Jan. Also known as THERA SPR. It's been pretty quiet since our meeting in Killington's in the fall.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, moving on to some organizational tasks. The first thing is we need to find a new chairperson for this committee. And so
I nominate Mike Skaza.
Okay, we have a nomination. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay.
I
Are there any others?
I was gonna propose a couple of people that I approached. Mike appreciates this getting thrown on him.
I'm sure he does it. Shut his mic off.
Did he accept the nomination?
No, I don't, is he on? Is he still on?
Yeah, I think he left.
See, he should have stayed.
Okay. Let's go back. Are there nominations? Go ahead, Maggie.
No, go ahead, Maggie.
No, I was just gonna say, that being chair is not a big lift. All you need is to be briefed on the meeting schedule and the agenda before each meeting, which happens once every 3 months, and to facilitate each meeting like Jan is doing now. I even give you a script if you want it. I will type out what you need to say. Like, I am in charge of everything from the agenda to the location to everything else. So I do all the hard work. You don't have to do that much. So that's my plug to get someone to be the chair. And for the record, I did do the count. We do not have quorum, no big surprise, but since we do need a new chair and since quorum's about to change anyways, I think it would be best to conduct the vote with the shared consensus as we have been doing. So,
Okay. All right, so nominations. It's awful quiet.
don't make me start naming names of the people I went to. That would not be fun. Yeah, I think I might have to. Okay. Well, let's see. I approached Mike Ramsey. I approached Mike Jones, who doesn't appear to be here tonight.
He couldn't get on. He's technically failed. He texted me and like, we should have came here.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. I approached Bob Morlino. Let's see, who else did I approach? I believe I approached Bill Sweet, but he's not here. And there's one other person, I believe, but their name is escaping me right now. I know I sent an email to you, Bill L, but I never got a response. So
Respectfully declined.
yes, okay, makes sense. So would anyone like to propose a nomination for any of those people?
I nominate Michael Ramsey.
Okay, Peter nominating Michael Ramsey. Is there a second?
I'll
Not sure.
He's willing. If he's willing, I'm saying, yeah.
He's frozen. Not moving.
I'll
Oh, there you
accept the nomination.
Okay,
Okay. Oh, do we have a second for the nomination?
I second.
All right. And doing it by vote. So just raise your hand or do the emoji or whatever to show that you support electing Mike.
That's an easy one. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, good man.
All right, excellent. So I saw most hands go up, so we will be officially nominating Mike Ramsey as our new chair. Thank you, Mike.
Mike.
We have one other
You have to
position.
explain-
What was that?
You have to explain what the next item is, the IPPV.
Yes, yeah, getting there, gosh. So the IPPW rep, that's the other position we have open right now. So that is the Integrated Preparedness and Planning Workshop. It consists of 2 virtual workshops in the month of April, so it's coming up really fast. Workshop 1 discusses the integrated preparedness planning process. So it's essentially a period that spans 3 years where regions of the state come together to discuss their priorities for training and how that aligns to the FEMA core capabilities. And it creates a schedule for the next 3 years. So the first workshop discusses the planning process, reviews results from the 2022 Stakeholder Preparedness Review, and has participants break into working groups to formulate activities related to planning, organization, equipment, training, and exercising. And then the second workshop, which is actually May 3rd this year, reviews these activities. And then as a group, we collaboratively schedule events to meet statewide priorities for the next 3 years. Now, VEM wants an elected rep from each REMC to attend. I will be doing a lot of the legwork for the IPPW itself. My assumption is that they want someone from the REMC there to report on their experience as an observer and as a learner. So with that, again, the only real commitment is participating in 2 virtual workshops, one in April, one in May, and maybe taking some notes so you can report back to us in June. So with that, do we have any nominations for someone to be the IPPW rep?
We're the ones that we talked to, it's like,
This is for the chair.
I know, but we're gonna go right down the list.
I will say that the Department of Health just did their IPPW yesterday, and it's not that bad. It's pretty painless.
Interesting.
Oh, just-
Well, he's
Oh,
not a voting member, so he can't be nominated.
I am not anything, so. I'm
You wanna be a voting member?
Not how this
I
works.
don't think I'm allowed to.
Okay, so, I'm trying to think. I don't want to get someone who has double duty, so being like an EMD and a select board chair. Jared, how would you feel about being nominated the rep? Is he there? Jared, are you with us? Okay, I guess he's stepped away for the moment. Let's see, who else do we have here? Bob Case, would you be willing to be one of our reps potentially?
No, I don't think so right at this time. I'm kind of busy right now.
Okay, got it. I guess I'm just gonna call people out because I'm not sure how else to do this. Jeff Chase, are you with us? Would you be interested? Jeff, are you with us? Okay, I guess.
Maggie, when do you have to have somebody signed up for it by?
Well, considering that the workshops are next month, I would really like to get someone in this position tonight.
What are the date? May 3rd was one. What's the April one?
April 5th. They're both Wednesdays. Whoop. Okay, Jared posted a message in the chat. He's super busy, so respectfully decline. Tom Johnston, what about you?
Can these be virtual as well? Or
Yes, these are both virtual meetings.
Yeah, and what's the time frame?
That would be, so it's on those 2 Wednesdays, and I can pull up my calendar really quick to tell you.
Is it April 5th and May 3rd?
Yes, April 5th and May 3rd, and the timing would be 1 to 3 p.m.
Mhm.
At least workshop part 1, and then workshop part 2, same time. So only 4 hours total.
Yeah. And what's the pay rate again?
Oh, I wish I could tell you that information.
If we do it in person, where is it?
It's not in person, it's completely virtual. So
Oh, everything is virtual. Okay.
Yep.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay, excellent.
Thank
So
you,
much.
Tom.
So we do need to technically have the nomination process. So does anyone want to nominate Tom? Okay, Bill Lovett nominates Tom. Do we have a second?
I got, I'll I second. say Tom Johnson, yes, for sure.
Okay, Jim is our second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hmm.
All right. Oh, Jared has his hand raised, so,
Thanks, Tom. You voted.
okay, yep, that was him voting. Yep, that's right. That's a thing you can do. So, with that, we will have Tom Johnson be our IPPW rep. Excellent. Okay, so the next thing to go over, reviewing and updating the bylaws. So let me share my screen again to just give you a glimpse at that. Do I have so many tabs open? Okay, there we go. These are the minutes, so that's not what I'm looking for. Okay, so what we're looking to amend in the bylaws. Currently, we have the LEPC rep position, which Bob is taking for 1 year. And
I think it's supposed to be 3.
yes, and we need to change it
Okay.
to 3 because he's also nominated for the CERC, which is the State Emergency Response Committee, and that is also a 3-year term. So that's why we originally had that on the agenda. We just want those to match up nicely. So I'm trying to see where it is in the bylaws. I can't find it at the moment. But it's definitely got to be in there somewhere. So, in order to make an amendment to the bylaws, there's this whole process outlined in Article 12. And so it was placed on the agenda for this meeting. The proposal is discussed for this meeting, which we just did. And then it says the proposal shall be placed on the agenda and voted upon at the next regular meeting, and passage of any amendment to these bylaws shall require an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the quorum, which who knows what quorum's going to look like by the time we have our next meeting, if this law goes through to give us a 5 as a quorum. So I suppose we have to stick to the bylaws, or would it be possible for us to vote on this now that we have a decent amount of people here? I don't know. What do you think, Jan?
I don't think you
I
really, I think you have to stick to the bylaws.
We have to stick to the bylaws.
Yeah. or if we
I
can be
hate to
checked-
say that, also, but I think that's true.
Okay, all right. Okay, so in that case, we will have this meeting be the time we officially discussed it. Are there any proposed amendments to the amendments that we will be making to the bylaws to switch the LEPC rep from 1 year to 3 years? Okay, hearing none, we will put that on the agenda to officially vote on at the next meeting, which is at the end of June.
You have something in there that describes the quorum.
There is a section of the bylaw describing quorum.
Can we do it to whatever, to reflect whatever gets decided on?
Yeah, so that will be, we'll probably have to go through this process again.
So we couldn't like leave it open-ended based on what the decision would be. So that next time we could vote both of them changes in. We're just bound by the law, right? Yeah. Bound by this.
I mean, once they officially say how they're gonna change quorum, hopefully that'll have an end to let us change our bylaws easier. I'm honestly not sure what that's gonna look like until I get more information. So, but that will definitely be changed eventually. Because every region is having a hard time reaching quorum. And I think the rule of 5 is gonna be really good for everyone, so. All right, with that, the last thing we need to review is the regional plan for 2023. So when this committee was started, we created a regional plan that was approved in May of 2022. It essentially goes over the mission and goals of the REMC, our purpose, what our membership is composed of. And one of the things we have to change, as you can see here, the leadership roles. David Atherton's not the chair anymore. Stephanie Burke is no longer administrative support. I am. We've officially filled the THIBRA SPR and the IPPW representative. So all of those need to be updated. And Appendix A. Well, first, let me back up a little. There's a whole section with regional coordination during a disaster, mutual aid programs for fire, law enforcement, EMS, and so on and so forth. And it outlines it in all these fancy maps and things. We don't have to do anything with that. That's just letting you know that's something that's in the regional plan. And this will not be changed. It'll be a part of the plan that I will be submitting to VEM by June 1st, which is also dictated in our bylaws to do that every year. So I'll just kind of skip through this. Appendix A is voting members by municipality. Obviously, our voting members have changed since the last year. So that is the next thing I would have to update, is making this list match our current list. So those are the proposed changes that I will be making. It doesn't say in our bylaws we need to vote on those. So is it good for me to just talk it over? Or
Didn't we used to just change it, let you know?
Yes.
yeah, okay. All right, then I'll do that. I'll have that changed, and if we really want to, I can show you the new copy that I submit. Yeah.
Maggie, when's the next meeting? June what?
The next meeting is June 28th. That is also on the agenda.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. Okay, so with that, we have open to the public, which I don't see any. Well, We have a few. We have the non-voting members, so I should amend that. Do we have any comments from the public tonight? Okay, hearing none, we will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Oh, Abby, yes, please go ahead.
I was just wondering, Eric, if you're still there, could you introduce yourself for everybody?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, my name's Eric Pulver. I'm the new emergency preparedness specialist with the Department of Health based in Rutland. So,
You're based across the road here.
right across the street.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so he's taking over Abby's old position and we're happy to have him.
Happy to be here.
All right, okay, so with that, may I have a motion to close the meeting?
I don't think we should close the meeting.
All right, Bob Morlino makes the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, second by Peter Mantello. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Maggie. Thanks, Maggie.